A little pink-haired girl named Rena, running happily to her father along a long corridor. He called her to him. She hopes that her father called her for a reason and that it was because of her birthday, which is the next day. She opens the door. She sees a large, dark room. In the middle of the room is a chair with an unknown man sitting on it, and her father is standing next to him. The girl suspects something. She is puzzled by the presence of an unknown man. The girl's father takes her by the hand and pulls her hard, and she lets out a moan of pain. The unidentified man asks if this is the same child the girl's father was talking about. He says that she seems very nice, and he feels a little sorry to use her as a victim. Rena does not understand this situation at all. She tries to comprehend the words of an unknown man. She starts crying and asks her father what it all means. Her father replies that if it helps His Majesty, his decision will not change. He squeezes her hands tightly. On the night before her 12th birthday, she was abandoned by the man she truly loved, her father. 6 years have passed. Strong men throw the girl against the wall and ask her where she came from. A short girl stands up for her and warns the men not to touch Rena. But the men only laugh at her threats, especially because of her short stature. Rena runs up to the girl and tells the men that they don't have to do this because her father is the Marquis of the North. The men did not believe the girl, but one of them said that the daughter of such a man could not be walking around with only one maid in such turbulent times. He told the girls to come up with something more truthful. He approaches Rena and touches her face. He assures her that she can be sold for a good price. The girl started shouting at them, telling them not to even dare approach them. In response, the men just laughed and said that the girl could be sold for a good price to perverts who would definitely enjoy this. The man who had been talking to the girls the most approaches Rena and tells her to go with him nicely. An unknown person appears behind him, takes the man by the head, and throws him face first into the wall. The man was not happy about this surprise, and he turns to the unknown man. This unknown person is dressed in black clothes. He came to help the girls. Out of anger, the man who had been hit by the stranger started punching him. But the unknown man reacted and threw the man to the ground with a strong punch. The other men ran up to the beaten man, took him with them, and ran away from the unknown man. The stranger saved the girls. The younger girl, Rena's maid, shouts to the man, asking if he is here to sell them. The unknown man took off his hood and revealed his face. He turned out to be a handsome, dark-haired young man. He tells the girls that it is very dangerous here, and he walks them home. They ended up at his house. He treats the girls to a wide variety of food. The man's name is Rin. The girl thanks him. She says that he is the first person who helped them and who did not ask for anything in return. The man replies that he did not expect them to follow him. The girl says that he offered them a place to stay if they had nowhere else to go. Rin is surprised that they followed a stranger. Rena replies that she introduced herself and he introduced himself too, so there shouldn't be any problem. He replies that it's not enough to trust strangers so easily. The girl says that if he wants them to leave, they will. The man replies, embarrassed, that he didn't really mean anything by that, and that he was just thinking out loud. The girl, named Uni, says that the man embarrassed her and then made excuses that they shouldn't take it personally. Rena asks them not to talk like that to their savior. Rin asks Rena if it is true that her father is the Marquis Rubel. He adds that he didn't know he had a daughter. She sadly replies that she is indeed his daughter, but only those who need to know. The man thought that she was an unofficial daughter and therefore illegitimate. Rin suggests that they return home. He says that he doesn't know any reasons or circumstances, but life in the capital is too chaotic, and what happened recently could happen again. He adds that the girl is very eye-catching because she is very beautiful. Therefore, it is very easy to get attention. It will be very easy to sell her for a lot, and everyone asks for a fee for help. The girl asks if he will ask for a fee for that too. He was a little embarrassed because he thought he had scared her. He stands up abruptly, which confuses Ren. Ren puts the knife on the table and tells them that it is for their safety. He tells them to use it whenever they need it. She asks him how to use it. He picks up the knife and tells her that if he comes closer, she can stab him with it. While saying this, he stabs one of the dishes, showing her exactly how to do it. She started laughing. Rena says that he does too. The man asks what she is talking about. In response, Rena tells him that he is also very handsome. Rin doesn't understand why she said that. He thinks she's not very smart. The night has come. The girl wakes up to be woken up by Rin. She wonders if she needs to stab him right now. He takes her by the hand and tells her that she needs to hide under the bed right now, and quickly. The same man who beat Rin bursts into the room. The man is accompanied by 2 other men. Rin was waiting for them. The man starts yelling that Rin should give back the girl he took from him. In response, Rin says that he's just talking nonsense and that he'd rather leave on the good side. The man smiles menacingly and stabs his arm with a knife, holding a blue stone in his hand. He summoned the undead to Rin's house only to take the girl and sell her. The undead attack Rin. Rin, with his sword in hand, defends himself from the undead's attack and flies back a little. The girl climbed into the scene and stood between Rin and the undead. She screams for them to stop. Rin yells at it to get out of the way and continues to fight the creature. The man who summoned the undead says that the girl needs to be naive in moderation. She begins to say that she will not be able to forgive such violence, which makes the man angry, and at this time, the undead attack the girl. Rin runs to her aid, but it turns out that there is no need to do so. The girl handled the monster on her own. Everyone in the room was shocked by what they saw. They did not expect such a naive girl to be able to handle such a creature. She emphasizes to them that they are the only ones who are really naive here. The man who summoned the undead activates the stone he holds in his hand. He turns into the undead himself. He went out of his human mind and attacked his partner, biting his neck. After that, he immediately ran at the girl to attack her. But she reacted quickly and hit him on the back of the neck, causing him to fall and pass out. His 2 partners were lying on the floor. The girl turned to them and told them that it was a bad idea to take whatever they had. She asked them when the man started carrying a stone called an altar. They hesitated to answer. Because of this silence, she looked at the men menacingly and asked if she was being too nice in asking this question. This provoked the men into action and words. They answered in confusion and fear that about 3 months ago, this man had accidentally found this thing and started wearing it. Rina said that she would confiscate the stone. She added to her husband that they would have to take responsibility for something they were not happy about. Uni came out from under the bed and said that mistakes can always be corrected. She held up both palms and said that they needed to put in everything they had. When Rina, Rin, and Uni returned to the living room, Rin began to ask Rina if everything she said and did was just a game. In response, she said she didn't know what he was talking about. Rin pointed out that she was just playing weak. The girl assured Rin that she had never actually tried to make herself look weak. She was just following basic etiquette. The embarrassed man asked if it was really a good idea to give herself to a gang of bandits as a common courtesy. Both girls looked at each other and said nothing. Uni finally decided to tell us what they were talking about. She said that everyone needed it, including them, the others, and even other decent girls. Rina agreed with her words, nodding. They explained that it was a kind of revival of justice, and they just had to take care of the wages and cover travel expenses, so it was unavoidable. The man noticed them and said it was just a theft. But the girl denied this and said that there were many other words to explain this action. Rin thought about it and realized that she had never really asked for help, and besides, he had even given them a dagger for self-defense. He was very ashamed of what he had done. He realized that he had simply interfered in vain. The girl snapped him out of his thoughts and said that she was interested in learning about this stone called an altar. The altar is the key that opens the gates to hell. This stone appeared about a century ago and changed the history of mankind. On the way to the capital, Rin heard that the altar was in this city, and he was just investigating. Rin doesn't understand why he thought the girl was naive. Rina noted that she would now have the altar, and she asked him if Rin would take it away. Rin replied that this thing was very important, but she would not take it by force. The girl told the man that she thought he was very nice. She explained that he had not really intervened in vain, and that there was no need to save her, but she would not have refused kindness. She thanks Rin and tells him that she is sincerely grateful to him, so she will give him the stone as a promised reward. He says he will gladly accept it. He adds that it is too much for a thank you, so he will repay it in another way. Rina replied that she would wait. She asks him if he will return to the palace if the deed is done. He replies that he cannot accompany them because he has companions. The girl wonders what exactly Rin does and wants to ask him, but doesn't dare. She smiles at him and tells him that they will see each other at the palace. He smiles back at her and agrees. After a long time, Rin is in the camp, and it turns out that he is the Duke. The knights who came to him ask Rin how the investigation went. He tells them that the robbers used the altar to steal. One of his charges loudly informs his squad that after 2 days of tracking down His Majesty, He has obtained the altar, so the goal has been achieved, and they must return to the Grandis Grecia. At this time, they are sitting on their horses, ready to leave. They resumed their movement and headed for their destination with His Majesty Rin. He remembered Rina's words, which were a compliment to his appearance. Rin thought that it was still up for debate, and he believed that those words were actually meant for the girl, not him. A smile appeared on his face. He thinks the girl is very strange, because she pretends to be naive and is actually plotting to steal, but she is surprisingly very honest. He was distracted from his thoughts by his ward, who asked him if anything good had happened to him. He said that the Duke was in a good mood. Rin was silent in response. Rin turned to him. His name is Deka. The Duke asked him if Rubel had a daughter. Deka asked him if he meant Rubel, the Marquis of the Northern Lands. It is noted that the West and the East do not have very positive relations. He replied that he had a daughter, but she died many years ago. The Duke asks him what her name was. Deka replies as if she were Rina or Regina. Rin hesitates in his thinking. He thinks that Rina was just a ghost he saw yesterday. Although he thought she was just a bastard daughter. He decides to ask her about her affiliation with the Rubel family when they meet again. At this time, Rina and Uni are riding in a carriage. Uni remembers the young man and notes that he was very honest. Rina agrees with her words. Uni wonders what he does for a living because his clothes were very shabby. Rina replies that they will find out the next time they meet. Uni asks the girl what they will say to each other when they see each other at the palace. The girl replied that she would first greet him and ask him how he was doing. She continued that she would give him a chance to apologize. Uni was a little surprised. Until the age of 6, Rina lived alone in a suburban estate. On the advice of the adults, the Viscount's wife had to move away from her daughter to concentrate on raising her heir. Little Rina has always been surrounded by loneliness and solitude. When she looked at the portrait of her parents, she wondered when she would finally be able to return home. Time continued to pass. In the 6th year of Rina's life, an order came from the main estate to return to her. Rina was over the moon with happiness. She had seen her parents only in a portrait, but in real life they looked even more beautiful to her than she had imagined. The girl sincerely believed that in the future, her life would be filled with happiness and joy every day. Rina was distracted from her thoughts by Uni, who loudly pointed out that the palace was already visible from the carriage window. The courtyard was full of movement and life. The people walking around the palace looked luxurious and lived up to their status. Uni, looking at the line, remarks that the line is very long, and by the time they get through it, it will be night. But Rina replied that they would not have to wait. She asks her maid if she has the invitation with her. At this time, Uni reached into her bag to find the envelope with the invitation. She found the invitation that Pan had sent her. Uni hands the envelope to one of the knights at the gate to the manor. He apologizes to them because he did not know that they were invited by the Lord himself. The gates open for them to enter the Empire Day celebration. They arrived at the imperial mansion, which made Uni very excited, and she looked around their temporary residence very excitedly. She asks Rina if she will go to see the Lord who invited them. She replied that she would not go unless he invited her. Rina is going to go to her parents' house to see her father in person, but she is prevented by the guards, who tell her that she cannot go any further and should leave. They have a message from His Excellency. The message said that Rina should not take advantage of her father's loss, and this was the last time he warned her not to do anything else. She asked the guards to convey her words that she is very insistent on a meeting, but they say that this is not possible and ask her to leave. One of the butlers runs up to Rina and the guards. He invited her to talk privately in a room. When they arrived, they were seated opposite each other. The girl asked the butler how he had been doing all this time. But the man was not very happy, so he asked loudly how she could have pretended to be dead all this time. She is a little confused by this. She notes that she is the same Rina and asks him, confused, if he remembers her. She plunges into her childhood and tries to remind him of how he laid a red carpet in 2 layers for her when she was little so that she wouldn't fall down the stairs because she fell down them every day. However, this layer of the walkway impeded the usual movement of the maids, so they often fell on the stairs. He denied all of this and said that their real lady had died long ago, and if she had known how desperate her master was at the time, she would never have dared to do this. But he will treat her to tea, since she has come all this way to be in the palace. He asks the servant to leave because he will make the tea himself. He reluctantly puts a white powder in the tea, which turns out to be a paralyzing poison. The butler does not like the fact that she has returned, and he is forced to take such measures. He puts a cup of tea in front of her. She notes that she is making a point, and that if she says anything else, it will not make a difference. So she asks him to just say hello to her father and tell him that she was doing well on her own. The butler is sure that this is the end for her now. She asks him what will happen if she is found as a corpse tomorrow. The butler realized that he was on to her. She drank the tea in one go, thanked me for the meeting, and said goodbye. When she left the room, she quickly ran to the restroom to induce a gag reflex. She knew she had been poisoned. Uni was in her presence in the restroom, so she was confused and asked what had happened to her. Rena asks her to lift her up. She can't feel her legs, so she realizes that it was a paralyzing poison. Uni is shocked that the girl has already been poisoned in such a short time. Rena replied that a dear person had given it to her, and she could not refuse. This poison is silent and powerful, and if the symptoms are ignored, the body will become paralyzed, leaving you unable to breathe. Rena laughed hard and loud. Uni didn't understand at all, so she thought it might be the poison. But Rena replied that she thought it was all just funny. Uni asks if she has seen her father. Rena replies that she saw the butler. She continues that she came a long way, and in the end, she only got one note. She gave the note to Yuna. For the maid, this note does not seem very touching, but Rena notices that it is because of the lines about the loss of her father. But Yuna thinks that these lines are more about anger. Rena explains that parental loss means pain and wounding, so maybe her father is really sorry for what he did. Then, she wants to believe that he at least feels a little guilty about it. Uni asks if she really believes what she is saying. Rena replies that it's a 1 in a million chance, but it's true. She was confused, but then she heard the poison being put in the tea. So she took a bite of it and watched the butler's reaction, and it made her laugh. Uni asks if it was really necessary to swallow the poison. Rena explains that he was trying so hard that she had no choice but to drink it. She also notes that she is not in danger of dying. The maid believes that even if she does not die, the pain will still remain. Uni, sitting on Rena's couch, says that tomorrow people will come to check on Rena's condition, so they need to visit them early. Uni wonders if they will send a hitman after that. The girl agrees that the killer could be sent. Uni interrupts her and says that they need to share a bed to determine where Rena will sleep and where Uni will sleep. She asks Rena not to do something so rash and illogical anymore. When night fell, Rena immediately got out of bed because she felt as if her body was on fire. Perhaps it was because of the poison that remained in her body. She went to the balcony. Rena opened the door and heard the sound of music coming from the hall. These sounds came through the ball, and the girl thought it was fun. From the very beginning, she could have been among them if her father had not sold her. She jumped off the balcony and landed in the garden. As they say, a night garden is the best place for secret dates. But she felt the presence of a stranger behind her. She remembered that they could still call in an assassin to finish her off. She did not expect the killer to come so quickly. She quickly turned around and saw the familiar face of a man. It turned out to be Rin. She realized that she had completely forgotten to bring a self-defense item. He replied that they could do without it now. She said that they had met much earlier than she had thought. Rena emphasized that during this time, he managed to change very quickly. He asks her if she goes for a walk. Rena said she was, and asked him a similar question. He said yes, and noticed that she was wearing her shirt again. Rin took off his jacket and threw it over the girl. This made him a little embarrassed, but he looked away. The girl noticed his concern. Rin asked if she had seen her father. She responded by asking if he was just asking or checking up on her. He replied that he had only heard that she had been treated a bit roughly. She pointed out that, in fact, everyone already knew this. A short silence passed between them. Rin interrupted her and asked why she was looking for a meeting with Rubel. She replied that she could see how interested he was in her business, but that he didn't tell her anything about himself. He stopped abruptly. Rin began to tell her that he was from the eastern lands, and Rena's father was from the northern lands, and that things were not going well with the north. So he didn't say anything because he thought it would make her uncomfortable. She was genuinely surprised by his actions and deeds, and she realized that he was hiding his true identity because of her. She told him that she wanted to exist. This is the reason why she is so eager to meet her father. The girl said that now she simply does not exist. She has been completely erased from this world, and the only thing stranger is that she is still alive. Now, her death is a much more natural thing. That's why she came here, so that her father could take full responsibility. But she denies that she was unable to see him. Rin is very impressed by the girl's character. He thought that usually sensitive people are soft and strong people are cold. But he sees that this girl is very gentle, but resilient. The man gives her some advice for the future. If she fails to meet the Marquis and he rejects her, she can come to him in the east. The girl found this suggestion very interesting. The girl explains that she thought he was a small foot soldier, since he searched for the altar alone, but that his status is likely much higher. She asks if she should call him His Majesty the Duke the next time they meet. He realized that she was on to him. Rin replies that she should only call him that in front of others. He asks her what he should call her next time they meet. She says that in front of others he should call her lady, but if they are alone, he should just call her by her first name, Rena. He says shyly that he often walks here at night to get some fresh air. She asks him why he says this, but he says that he just says it for fun. Rena replied that it was a great coincidence and that she also likes to walk at night. The next day, Marquis Rubel receives a written notice that was sent that day at dawn. This letter was sent from Rena. Rena greets her father and continues that he might have wondered why she is seeking to meet him after many years of silence. She is also very curious about why he did this to her. So if he explains the reason, she will share with him why she is here and what she is capable of. After reading it, the man clutched a piece of paper tightly and was unhappy about it. The Marquis asked the butler who brought the message to him what had really happened. The butler emphasized that it was the strongest poison, but somehow she had survived. Rubel replies that he doesn't think there was any mistake. He knew about the precision and responsibility the butler takes, so he certainly could not have made a mistake. The butler said that he would correct the mistake and that there would be no problems this time. One of the maids came in to tell the Marquis that she had the information he had asked for. The information said that Rena Rubel had been invited by the Duke of the Southern Lands. The butler is confused by this. He asks the Marquis why, if she had been invited by the Duke himself, she arrived alone. He replied that she was testing the waters, that is, checking his reaction. The Marquis realized that if she was a guest of the Duke of the South, this could be taken as an insult that could not be tolerated. The ban on passage and the case of poisoning is the cause of great disrespect for the Duke of the South. The man noticed that his daughter had become much smarter since they had seen each other. In the palace where the Duke of the South was staying, he was waiting for his invited guest, that is Rena. Uni, who accompanied Rena, opens the door to the palace for her and tells her husband that they have arrived. Rena asks the Duke if he slept well last night. The Duke has a name, Bill Alice Grace. The man replies that the night has surprised him, and he takes her out to see him. The girl wonders what he means. He notes that the knight did not warn her about his arrival, but went straight to Marquis Rubel and did not even say anything. The girl replies that she has nothing to say, and she apologizes for her actions. He takes off his glasses and says that he is not interested in her apology. He is concerned with a much more serious problem. He wants to know why the mercenary for the big bucks was a woman. For several centuries in a row, the Southern Lands were at war with the dead. This war began and ended in silence. The reason was that the dead reacted to sound. Their bone-dry bodies walked across the field, staggering from side to side. But as soon as she heard even a sound, they would abruptly change and attack. The Duke of the Southern Lands was overcome with a sense of inevitable defeat. He then realized that nothing was left of his army. It seemed to him that it was the end. He noticed a knight holding a dagger in his hand, and the man felt as if he would die before anyone else. The man was shrouded in a sense of guilt over the dead, so he wants to protect at least the life of this knight. At the last moment, he saw a miracle. Only then did the Duke of the Southern Lands realize that among the melting pot he had gathered with his own hands was a torch with sacred fire. He asks again why the savior of his expectations and hope turned out to be a woman. The man asks if this is a real image of him. The girl explains that first she needs to clear up a misunderstanding. She has never presented herself as a man. Uni adds that she dressed appropriately for the occasion. Just as the girl said, the knight never introduced himself as a man. Rena continues that she is very embarrassed that she surprised Herzog like that, and she asks if there will be a problem with this. She claims that he didn't invite her husband, but her. The Duke asks her to answer why she was looking for a meeting with Rubel from the Northlands and what she has in common with him. She confidently and calmly answers that she is his daughter. More precisely, she is the daughter who makes Rubel's life difficult by her very existence. The Duke says that the story seems confusing to him, so he won't ask anything else. But the North will definitely solve everything, and the Duke asks if her move was rash. She replies that everything was right. He asks the girl what she is going to do next, and whether she has accepted his position. She replies that she would be happy if her husband would protect her. He asks her if she is suggesting that he make war on the northern lands. Rina replies that she is not, and she asks him to simply take the side of the weaker. The man says that he will not wait any longer, and adds that the girl can use him as much as he uses her. But if the hard-won security of the southern lands is threatened by interference in her affairs, he will not stand aside. Rina notes that she will remember this, and that her victory will be his victory. The Empire of Gracia, thanks to the past Emperor Nigilus Gracious, was reborn on the lands of the once-destroyed Kingdom of Gracia. The capital, Grandis Gracia, became the center. The empire itself was divided into south, north, east, and west. The blood heirs of the imperial family received land. The eastern lands were conquered and led by the illegitimate son of the previous eastern duke. But because of his origin, he could not receive the title of the imperial family, Gracia. His name was Rinyan Eiterner. Western lands. The Duke of the Western Lands was defeated in the war and moved to the capital as a cardinal. The past Western Duke and current cardinal is Clavis Serenium Gracia. The Southlands. Until recently, the Duke of the Southern Lands struggled to survive the war, and with the help of an enforcer he won, barely escaping with his life. The Duke of the South is Bill Alice Grace. Northern Lands. After the last Northern Duke died in the war, his eldest son inherited the title and won the war. The Northern Duke is Jura Flanus Gracia. The conflicts that accumulated during the war and personal reasons gave rise to a deep enmity between the parties of the Gratian Empire. When Emeria Grazia turned 100, the South, the North, and the Cardinal gathered in the auditorium. Cardinal Clavis asks the Duke of Alice about the affair of last night, and that everyone is talking about it. The Southern Duke asks what the talk is about. Clavis replies that the man used some girl to cause trouble for Marcus Rubel. He wonders why Alice would do that. Jura, the Northern Duke, says that this is very frivolous, as it is very low to use a simple girl. Alice angrily asks the men if they have ever thought that this was all planned specifically to make the North recognize this child and think about their actions. Jura speaks up and says that he doesn't care if it was just a game or if it was for real. He asks why the South took a step that could shift the mood of the North into a negative context. Alice is deeply angered by Jura's words. There is a great deal of tension between them, during which Cardinal Clavis points out to Alice that he usually acts with much more restraint. He asks him to protect his reputation. Clavis decides to change the subject and asks the men why no one has invited the Eastern Duke, that is, Rinyan. Alice became inflamed and called the Eastern Duke a miserable brute born of a slave. He said that he was not worthy of the title of Duke and should not be named. Jura agreed with the man. Instantly the door bangs and swings open. The Eastern Duke arrived, holding a young servant by the collar. The man, throwing the boy to the floor, says that the same boy did not tell him about the place of the meeting until the last moment. He asks the other dukes if they ordered him to keep quiet about it. Clavis tells Rinyan that he is just in time. The Duke of the Eastern Lands says that the rats have been screeching so loudly that their squeals can be heard even outside the palace. Rinyan, about to sit down on an empty chair, stands on one of the servants he was holding by the collar. Duke Alice is outraged by the young man's behavior and remarks that his behavior is inappropriate, and he needs to learn manners if he wants to sit at a round table. Duke Rinyan puts his feet on the table, noting that the miserable rats who have secretly decided to gather at the table should not talk about manners. The Duke of the South is very angry at Rinyan's arrogance. Jura decided to leave first and said that he would not tolerate such behavior. Duke Alice decided to leave as well. Cardinal Clavis decided not to stay, telling Rinyan that he had made a very impressive appearance. All the dukes left the young man alone in the hall. The Duke of the East decided to return to his room, and accompanied by his faithful ward Deka, asked him to return to his room. Rinyan remained in his room. The man thinks that he went too far when he called the dukes miserable rats, since the Duke of the South is much older than him, and he needs to have respect for adults. He believes that it is better to receive hatred than contempt. He ordered his subordinate to find out about the situation with Rina, and it turned out that she was a guest of the Southern Duke himself. She is close to the one who is courting Rinyan. He realizes that she was actually supposed to be his enemy all along. An hour before the Duke's talks were to begin, Ren and Uni return to their room. Uni is not very happy with the Duke of the South's actions, as she says that the Duke invited them to cover himself, and now he is playing the tough guy. Uni noticed a letter lying under the door to their room. It was an invitation to the Imperial Ball, but the sender was not listed. Uni happily asks Rena if she has really been invited to the ball. The girl replies that she was most likely invited to the ball. Uni said that this was very nice, but Rena did not agree, and she said that they just wanted to test her. Now, no one in the Imperial Palace knows her, and she does not know who the sender is. But if this sender had sincere intentions, he would have come to her first to congratulate her. According to her, this is a test to see how much she is aware of high society. Junie is not happy at all. She now realizes that this could be a trap. Rena thinks, if she ignores the invitation, she will be considered arrogant, and if she finds a companion, she will be considered cunning. The maid noticed that whatever Rena chose, it could turn against her. She asks what she should do next. Rena asks Uni to get her the dress. Uni realizes what kind of dress Rena is talking about. She notes that it is the cause of their poverty. She adds that the dress can be decorated with fresh flowers, an embroidered fan, and luxurious jewelry. The women in the audience are delighted with the day of the evening ball. They are very surprised by the whole lake of champagne. They like the feeling of beauty in its majesty. Clavis was in the hall greeting everyone, and he immediately heard a conversation about Rena. The guest wondered if the rumored girl would come to the ball. Everyone made a bet on how she would appear. The cardinal tells Mr. Ruvid that his meticulousness has led the ball to much more interesting developments. Because Rena looked so festive, everyone in the room began to mock her. They started saying that she was beautiful, but she came to the ball alone, even without an escort, and that she had no idea about the rules of etiquette. One of the men who said all this looked at her mockingly. Rena was not pleased with this attitude, but she gave him a threatening smile, which made the man become aggressive. Clavis is analyzing the girl's actions, and he notices that she has started to play on the opposition and made the first move. He decided that this was a rather daring strategy, but he wonders if she can do it on her own. One of the guests at the ball was very outraged by the girl's behavior, and she stepped forward to show Rennie her displeasure. Without further ado, they looked at each other, showing their words and emotions with their eyes. Rena won in a tense, non-verbal duel, which made the girl, who was dissatisfied, turn around in frustration and decide not to continue their conflict. Clavis was very surprised that one look was enough to win. Rena turned her gaze to Clavis, which shocked and frightened him. The girl with whom she was in conflict decided to invite others to show everyone that there was a guest who did not meet the status of the ball. Clavis noticed that he had almost gone crazy. At this time, the hysterical girl asks the manager to do something about Rena. One of the men who openly mocked Rena gets very angry and asks her to leave the ball. He emphasizes that a girl like Rena cannot just show up to a ball of her own accord. As he walked to the middle of the room where Rena was standing, he held out his hands to her, but Rena took out the envelope with the invitation and beat his hand away with her own. The man falls down and is embarrassed. Looking at this scene, Clavis laughed a little and noted that it didn't look like anyone was going to get hurt. He asks Mr. Ruvid, who is sitting next to him, if he invited Rena for this very purpose. Rena noticed that enough of this is enough, because people around her are already outraged. She doesn't know who set this trap for her, but she believes that it was through him that she was able to introduce herself to others. The girl feels someone else's presence behind her back. She instantly turns around, sensing danger. It turned out to be Mr. Ruvid, and he said that he was grateful to her for accepting the invitation. The girl realized that he was the one who invited her. He bends down to kiss her hand. She tells him that she is the one who should be thanking him for inviting her. He asks her if she is going to leave the ball. She tells him that no one is inviting her to the dance, so unfortunately, she will have to refuse to participate in this event. He grabs her hard by the shoulder, and with a displeased expression on his face, he says that if she is sorry, she should stay longer. He asks if she can dance with him. Rena noticed that he was rather rude and tactless. This man drew the attention of the other guests to them. He asks the servants to bring them some drinks. He does not let go of her hand. Ruvid asks her if she wants to have a drink first. She indicates that she doesn't, which makes Ruvid rather unhappy. As if accepting her answer, he takes her by the chin and pours a glass of champagne over her head. He mockingly tells her that she shouldn't refuse the drink offered by the great man himself. People were at attention and watching closely. Mr. Ruvid had a lot of fun with everything he did. He is the younger brother of the Duke of the Northlands. His full name is Ruvid Flanus Gracia. The girl understood the man's identity and was actually curious about who invited her. It seems to her that he decided to humiliate the scoundrel who caused many problems in the north. Ruvid arrogantly asks her if she would like another glass of champagne while wiping her face with a handkerchief. The girl, who wanted to refuse, felt the touch of this handkerchief in her chest area and left the handkerchief in her chest. Ruvid wanted to humiliate her with this action. It was clear from her eyes that she was angry at his actions. The man enjoyed the attention from the public. People began to say that they do this for girls whose names are called for money. They spread rumors among themselves, noticing that it was getting more and more interesting. At this time, Rena is in a stupor because she does not know what to do in this situation. Perhaps she should pour champagne on Ruvid's face or hit him in the face and pull his hair. If she had her way, she would do exactly that. Ruvid didn't expect the girl to decide to just smile at him. She put the handkerchief in his glass and took her flower out of her hair and put it on the napkin. The man was not expecting this, so he got really angry. Rena notes that she now needs to leave. She turned around and walked away from the ball with a quick step. The girl's face showed indignation and strong dissatisfaction. Going to her room, she realizes that this is a big failure. She thought she could easily handle everything and announce her existence to everyone, but everything went completely wrong. She decides to just calm down and not continue with anything. But then she changes her mind because she doesn't want to give in to trash like Ruvid. The girl opened the door to her room, where she was met by Uni, and noted that the girl had come much earlier than she expected. Uni noticed that Rena smelled like alcohol. The maid is confused and asks what is wrong with Rena's appearance. The girl does not want to answer and says that she will explain everything later. She asks Yuna to help her get ready because she will be leaving again. Uni notices that her mistress has a terrible look of anger on her face. She notes that it takes her a long time to change into her dress. Rena asks me to prepare a uniform. She continues that she went down the wrong path from the beginning when she wore a dress to a meeting with mongrels. At this time, Clavis sadly says that he feels sorry for Lady Rena. In response, Ruvid says that this is very disgusting. Clavis notes that it might be very embarrassing because she is dressed so nicely. Ruvid calls her ugly. The cardinal disagrees, saying that with Rena's looks, she could be called a real beauty. Suddenly, Clavis noticed something and asked Ruvid to pay attention. Ruvid grimaces at what he sees and is very unhappy about it. A pink-haired girl dressed in a uniform walks down the red carpet. Ruvid noticed that the color of the uniform could be someone from the high nobility of the southern lands. It turned out to be Rena. She approaches Ruvid and asks him if he would like to dance with her to the song playing in the hall. She asks if he is going to give up after all this. The man finally realized that it was Rena Rubel. She takes his hand and pulls him towards her. The man is shocked by the girl's strength. She pulls him into the middle of the hall. The girl asks if they will dance here. Ruvid aggressively tells the girl that she should let go of him. Rena looked at him with an animalistic look and assured him that they would dance regardless of his answer. They started dancing. The girl tells him that it was her first time at the ball, so she couldn't immediately adjust to the atmosphere, and if she had known that the man liked rudeness, she would have adjusted immediately. Ruvid does not enjoy it. He is humiliated by it. Rena suggests that they should settle their conflict. She continues that they are both suffering from their feud, so they should give in to each other. A furious look appears on his face. He is outraged that she is humiliating him, while arbitrarily deciding to reconcile. As they dance, they approach the champagne fountain. While the violin is playing, she drops him from her hands into the fountain, but unexpectedly, she catches him right away. He tells her that she should not let him in because he will send her to the next world if she does. In response, she says that she would not dare to let the honorable prince in. She thanks him for the dance, noting that she has thoroughly enjoyed it. Shocked, Ruvid became furious and swung his palm to hit her in the face. But she defended herself with her hand, which shocked him no less. She notes that she can see by his face that he has not changed his mind. She throws him into the fountain, noting that the shamanic water that everyone was waiting for has spilled. She continues that, instead of a cork, the fountain now has the precious body of His Majesty the Prince. She took revenge on the aggressive, rude man. While the girl was enjoying her revenge, Clavis started clapping and laughing at this. At this time, the prince uses his powers out of anger. He showed the strength of the north while destroying the hall because of his anger. Clavis noticed that Ruvid was probably really angry now. At this point, the prince stands up from the fountain with a beastly expression on his face. 100 years ago, the kingdom of Gracia was wiped out. At one point, the tombs were opened, and the living dead crawled to the surface and attacked the living, sowing death all around. And when everyone was waiting for the end, the last direct descendant of the destroyed royal land, Nihil Grace, returned from the tomb, endowed with divine power. With the help of the power she received, she saved the whole world. People called this power law. Nigel Grace distributed the divine power she received in the tomb among her descendants, who rule an empire divided into 4 parts. The younger brother of the northern Duke of Jura, Ruvid Flenus Gracia, inherited this power, and he received a right called a cut. He tells the girl that it is not too late to ask for forgiveness, and then he will keep one eye. The girl jokingly noticed that she had 2 eyes, not one. Ruvid, about to use his power, shouted that in that case she would lose both eyes at once. One of the men, who walks straight toward them, addresses His Majesty the Prince, saying that he has come to escort him. Ruvid stopped using force after the man's words. The girl noticed that such an agitated ignoramus calmed down only after hearing the voice of the unknown man. When Rena turned to see the face of the person walking toward them, she saw her father. He is addressing the prince before he realizes what Marquis Rubel wants to talk to him about. The girl looks at her father with a frantic look. Ruvid was about to leave, bumping into the girl's shoulder. The Marquis looked at the girl. When she said the word father, he simply ignored her and passed her without reacting. Rena is shocked by the presence of the man who abandoned her. Rena turned to the Marquis, asking if the wound he was talking about was okay. He stopped. Rubel replied that it had nothing to do with her. Ruvid and Marquis Rubel returned to the palace where the northern duke was staying. The prince asks an older man who the girl is. The man replies that he does not know. Reuben wonders if she is his daughter, because they look so much alike. He replies that his daughter is dead, and he is sure that this girl is a simple fraud who decided to exploit his weakness. Ruvid is very angry about the recent events. The Marquis thanks the prince for intervening on his behalf. The prince, with a scowl on his face, tells him to leave his vile flattery to others. As the Marquis strokes the prince's hair, he explains that this method cannot be called elegant, but that such behavior would undermine the prestige of the imperial family. He described that the prince, after the fight, looked like a rat that had fallen into the water. Ruvid was about to verbally attack the man, but the Marquis thanked him for taking his side. Ruvid says that the southern assholes brought some kind of mongrel to shake them up. The older man explains that the Duke of the Southern Lands lost all his children in the war, and his memory is not the same. The girl is aiming at the old man who lost all his children, so he couldn't just resist. Ruvid called all Southerners worthless. Rubel believes that the prince is very naive now, as he does not even allow any thoughts of doubt that the girl is really his daughter. When night fell, Rignon came to the garden as usual. He was thinking about the recent events in the palace where the ball was held when he felt some vibrations. The Duke assumes that this unusual explosion is inherent in the power of grace. Rignon thinks that it is very unwise to use force in the palace, since it is not even a battlefield. He thinks that only a fool like Prince Ruvid is capable of such an idiotic act. The man turned on himself, thinking that he was the fool for waiting for the girl for so long. He heard a voice addressing him. Rena came to him, dressed in her uniform, greeting him. The man asked if she had attended a celebration. She looked at the Duke a little sadly and asked to talk about something more interesting than that. Renya noticed that she looked very tired, and he was worried, but he decided not to ask her anything, but to tell her what he had been thinking about for a long time. He got up from the bench and said that it was time to say goodbye. The girl was a bit shocked by his words. He continued that there would be no more night walks and asked her to forget that she had met him here. He explains this by saying that he had heard that she was the guest of the Duke of the South. She defended herself by saying that she was not really hiding this fact. Rignon replied that he was sure she was a good person. He continued that from now on, he should treat her like a dog. The man says that a couple of months ago, the emperor issued a decree that reads that the bravest knights should be selected and brought in. Perhaps this is the reason why the Duke of the Southern Lands invited the girl. The emperor will order the expansion of the empire's borders, and if the north, south, and west, which have strained relations, meet each other on the battlefield, it is highly likely that they will attack each other during the capture actions. Therefore, Rignon and Rena will have to meet each other on the battlefield. Rignon said that they were enemies. Rena was not happy with these words. She said that things could not go on like this. The next moment, she smiled and said that his coldness was begging for her to torture him. He doesn't understand what she means. Rena takes him by the shoulders and makes him sit back down on the bench. She said that perhaps it was a feature of the men of the imperial court that the prince of the northern lands was equally indifferent. The girl asked if Rinyan was a friend of the prince of the northern lands. He instantly proclaimed that this could not be. She says that she is really here as a representative of the Duke of the Southern Lands, but this is not a reason to become enemies, and she does not want to. He replied that this was not something that could be easily avoided. The girl said that he helped her even though she was from the Northern Lands. Rinyan explains that this is a completely different case, and she will suffer if she gets close to him. She said that she would deal with her problems on her own. The man asks her in confusion if it is okay for him to put her in danger. She emphasized that yes, because she likes him. While the girl looked him straight in the eye, the man was very shy in response. She notes that he owed her something and promised to repay her in any way he liked. He mentioned that he had to repay her for the altar he had given her. She says that if they continue their friendship, she will accept this as payment. The man points out that this will make him look like a coward. She held out her hand to him and asked him to live together until one of them died. He replied that this was a rather categorical promise. The man stood up and said he had one more condition. He asked that she not penetrate him too much. Rena was a little interested in his words, but she did not really understand what he was talking about. The man was very shy and covered his face with his hand. The girl noticed that he was very embarrassed by his own words. She said she didn't know what to do if she liked him so much. He said that such a liking is nothing. Rinyan shyly asks her to tell him if she falls in love with him or something. Rena thought that he didn't really look like a narcissist, although there must be a reason for that. She turned around and walked forward, saying that she was not planning a relationship either. She explained that she would only need to be a partner for one dance. She picked a rose from the flower bed and handed it to Reagan. Rena said that there was nothing to worry about, and that they should just enjoy it while the time allowed. Rinyan accepted the rose. They stood there and continued to talk cheerfully. At this time, Marquis Rubel is standing in front of a large window. From behind him, he hears a voice saying that the night is very beautiful. He turned and saw His Majesty Cardinal Clavis standing there with a glass of wine. The Marquis remarks that he shouldn't come like this because he might be seen. Clavis replies that there is nothing wrong with that, and he has an excuse. Clavis asks if the Marquis has anything he wants to ask him. Immediately, Rubel bombards him with questions, asking why Rena was alive and whether Clavis hadn't told him that she had been sacrificed and not even a corpse was left. Clavis, approaching the Marquis, remarked that it was very rude of him to say such a thing, knowing that his daughter had survived. The man points out that this girl is in league with the Duke of the South, and he is worried that the Duke will find out about his plans. The Cardinal, finishing his wine, notes that it is too late to worry about anything. He says that the Marquis's daughter has already seen him. She recognized him from the day the Marquis left her, but when their eyes crossed, she smiled beautifully at the man who had thrown her into hell. Clavis said that the child they sacrificed came back as a monster. He goes on to say that Rena made it all the way to the imperial palace by herself. He asks if the Marquis knows what this means. Rubel replies that she is confident that she will be able to stand up to them. Cardinal Clavis confirmed his words. He asks him to meet with Rena in person and find out what she wants, as she will answer him for sure. Clavis noted that this was not advice, but an order. Clavis handed the empty glass to Rubel and left the dark room, leaving the man alone. Once there was a rift, and the place with the crimson sky and damp earth was called the Tomb. Clavis wanted to take possession of the power called Law, which had previously been taken over by the Emperor Nihilus Gracious in the Tomb. And in order to get the power equal to the Emperor, he secretly threw countless little girls into the tomb. But the desire to gain power, equivalent to that of an imperial, is a rebellion. Therefore, Marquis Rubel must keep secret not only the truth that he sold his own daughter, but also that he himself joined the rebellion. The next day, Rena accompanied the Duke of Alice of the South to the palace. He asks her where she goes every night. The man adds that he heard her making a noise in the shape of the Southern Lands last night. She explained that she had defended the honor of the South and won. The man said that today he would officially declare her a representative of the Southern Lands, so she should keep her temper. Duke Alice says that today the Empress will finally give the order to go to war, so she had better listen. He explained that they would soon be told about everything and all the details would be revealed. The three dukes gathered in the ceremonial hall. The last to arrive was Duke Alice Beale, accompanied by Rena Rubel. Duke Ringyan turned his attention to the newly arrived Alice and Rena, and they noticed his gaze, which made Alice angry. Ringyan said that the old fox of the south had finally appeared here. Alice and Rena heard him, which made Rena a little surprised, and the Duke outraged. They noticed that the north was also in full force. Marquis Rubel looked at Rena, and Rena looked at him in return. The Duke of the South asks Rena to stay close to him. A loud voice emphasizes the need to remain silent and to improve manners as Empress Nigel Grace enters the hall. Everyone in the hall bends their heads and bodies to greet the arrival of the Empress. When she sat down on the throne, propping her head up with her hand, she ordered everyone to rise. She notes that she is glad to see everyone and that she is seeing some people for the first time, and some people she has already met for the first time. Cardinal Clavis stands next to her. The Empress asks why they are here. Clavis replies that today is the day of the foundation of the empire. She gives the order to begin. Clavis opens a large sheet of paper and says that today is a happy day, and in order to celebrate the 100-year history of the empire, Her Majesty has ordered the expansion of the territory. The new place, which the Empress wanted, is right under this ground, which is called the tomb. Clavis proclaims that Her Majesty has ordered the conquest of the tomb, the land of the dead. He says that the Duke of Alice in the war, for his merits in defeating the dead, has the opportunity to make his wish known. The Duke of Alice and Rena came into view of the Empress. The Duke asks that the powers of the South be transferred to a younger generation that can be trusted. Empress Neil picks up her sword and stands up. Rena comes closer to her and kneels down on one knee. Nigel Grace asks her name, and the girl replies that her name is Rena Rubel. Niall puts her sword to Rena's chin. She says that Rena has gotten very far under such a worthless name, so she will deal with her alone. She orders her to enter the tomb, putting her life on the line. The girl smiles and says that she will do as Her Majesty wishes. After that, Her Majesty immediately returned to her room, and people discussed it because they consider the Empress to be very scary. Duke Alice and Rena were returning to their room. The girl is called by Marquis Rubel, who asks if she can spare some time for him. Rena emphasized that she was not a lady, and it would be more correct if he addressed her as a knight. The man was a little embarrassed, but said that she was right, and that he had made a mistake in his words. He repeats his words, asking if the knight could spare some of his time, noting that it would not take much time. The girl looked at Duke Alice and received a non-verbal agreement. She agreed, as long as it wouldn't take long. In a separate room, they sat down opposite each other. The man says that the girl looks good. Rena asks him if he recognizes her. He said that he could not help but recognize his daughter. Rena looked at him in shock, her father looking very calm. The man tells Rennie that she has made a rather dangerous choice by taking the position of Duke of the Southern Lands. Rena told her father that he had gone too far and needed to do something before he lectured her. He agreed with her. The Marquis abruptly stood up from his seat and fell to his knees, asking his daughter Rena's forgiveness. She bent her head. The girl assured me that she could not say that she had not imagined this moment, but when it happened, she did not feel the desired joy. She asked him why he had done this to her. He said bitterly that he could not believe that she had reappeared. He cried and said that he thought he would never see her again. The girl made a sad face, but instantly she told him that she would have believed him if there hadn't been an attempted poisoning. He was shocked and desperate to ask her what he could do to make her forgive him. She replies that she wants to live under her own name. Rena asks him to recognize her existence officially. He bowed his head and said that he could not do it. The girl asked why. He explained that it was a mutiny. The Marquis continues that the Cardinal has taken her away to turn against the Empress, and if the truth comes out, she will become the daughter of a rebel. He takes her hands and tells her that he will give her a new life. The man promises her a more noble life than the title of daughter of a Marquis, not inferior in luxury to the imperial family. Rena looked at him with disdain, not believing a word he said, his tears or his remorse. She refused his promises and said that she wanted to live under her own name and she would continue to live as Rena Rubel. She asks if he wants to get rid of the real her. The man relaxes his face, realizing that she is just feeding on his thoughts, and the image of a grieving father did not work on her. He asks her what she wants. She takes a table knife from the table and hands it to him, asking him to kill her. The girl says that she will give him a chance to kill her. Rena explains that he has until she takes over the tomb, and during this time she will not take revenge or announce anything. But if he fails to do so, she will kill him instead. The girl takes the knife out of her father's hands and says that before he admits her existence, she can forgive him. The man was faced with a choice: kill, die, or confess. He asks her if she has to do this. The girl wants to ask him the same question if he has already fed his daughter poison, pretending to be unhappy. Indeed, it is just like 6 years ago. 12-year-old Reina is sitting on her knees on an empty street at night, illuminated by a lone lantern and the faint moonlight. The shocked little girl cannot realize why she is alone in an unknown place. She had to relive the most terrifying moments of her life. It was something that was impossible to understand whether it was reality or illusion. A city peasant approaches the lonely, abandoned Reina, asking if she is not alone. The next moment she finds herself in a place that looks like a brothel. A man asks for a fee for the little girl, receiving 3 gold coins for her. The woman who paid says that he wants too much. Little Reina asks where she is. She sees many different strangers who are targeting her as if she were live meat. Reina, crying, emphasizes that she is from the aristocracy, and she is the daughter of Viscount Rubel, so she should be brought home. The woman is interested in her words and asks if she can write. The girl answers that she can. On a piece of paper she wrote, "You are like a cold dream in a hot summer." The woman asked what this meant. Reina answered that it was a poem. It was a poem that was on the first page of Vita's collection of poems. The woman was convinced that she was indeed an aristocrat. Reina was put in shackles. She became panicked and hysterical, not understanding why her own father would do such a thing. She says that he told her how much he loved her, but coldly abandoned her. The girl heard the voice of a young man saying to his sister, who is a female exploiter, that he had learned that these were the Rubels, not the Vicontas, but the Counts. He goes on to say that this family had recently been granted the title of Count's family by the Duke of the South, and perhaps they had simply paid for it. The woman asks if there was anything said about finding the daughter. He says that there was a daughter, but she died, and even a funeral was held. The woman notes that this looks very suspicious. She suggests cutting off the girl's hair and sending it to Count Rubel. Poor Reina is under a lot of pressure from the adults. The next night, in the building in front of the inn, the girl was taken to the top so that she could see everything. The woman strokes Reina's head and tells her to sit quietly. She tells her that if she does something stupid, the woman will separate the girl from her beautiful father for life. The woman says that she should have thought of leaving her in the neighboring house, noting that the woman is very smart. One of the men asks the woman to walk faster. They went to meet with Count Rubel's men, leaving the frightened girl alone on the tower. She wonders if her father will come to save her, and even if he does, will she be able to forgive him? In a moment she noticed the butler with a group of 4 people. Reina was very happy to see him because she thought he would save her. A woman with her group of people says that if they came for the child, they must have money with them. The butler asks where the child is. The woman says that the child is in the back room of the inn, safe and sound, but she needs the money up front. Reina shouts out of the open window that the woman was lying and that she was actually in the building above. But immediately, the man stabs the woman in the stomach, which shocked the girl. The butler ordered his men to burn everything so that no one could escape. The men attacked the others. The butler was shouting, ordering them to leave no one alive and shoving everyone back so that they could not get out. In desperation, the girl shouts out the window after the men and the butler, who are already leaving. She asks them to save her, but the whole area has begun to burn, and the girl sees this hell, left all alone. "You're like a cold dream in a hot summer," is what adult Reina thinks of when she recalls these events. She turned away from her father and left the room. The man remained sitting on her lap. At this time, Uni was waiting for Reina, and it turned out that this was the 3rd day they had been in the palace. On the first day, there was an attempted poisoning, and on the second day, there was champagne. The maid is curious about Reina's condition and appearance. The door opened behind her, and Uni was ready to see Reina, beaten and disheveled. But Reina, fortunately, returned unharmed. Uni asked her why she was back so early, as she had many things to do in the evening. She looked at Uni with a sad look in her eyes, which made her a little worried. The maid asks if Reina is in trouble. Reina, taking off one of her uniforms, notes that nothing can be hidden from Yuna's eyes. She says that she did see her father after all. Uni hurriedly asked her hostess to sit down so that she could tell her what had really happened. She sat down on the couch and told her that it was actually a forced conversation. The little maid asked Rina if she had eaten anything. She replied that she had not eaten anything yet. Junie asked her to wait until she brought her something to eat. Junie set out a lot of sweets on the table, which surprised Rina. Junie replied that she got it all from her followers. Accordingly, Rina became a little interested in these followers. While Junie was telling stories for the other maids who were older than her, and for Junie's kindness, the women gave her lots of sweets and delicious food. She decided to share the goodies with her lady Rina. Rina noticed for herself that these were not followers, but those who simply thought Junie was cute. The girl said that she came to talk. She says that people will soon get close to Junie. In response, she asks if they will be bad people. The lady said that there was a high probability that they would be her father's people. Rina continues, if Junie thinks they are too dangerous, then the girl needs to leave, and as soon as possible. Junie asks what to do if it is not dangerous at all. The girl notes for her that this is a maid's question. She explained to the girl what she would have to do. A little later, the girl went to the underground laundry room to hang up the bedding. A voice from behind Junie noted that she was so small and already so hardworking. It turned out to be the same butler. Junie asked who he was. The man replied that he, like her, was accompanying his master. He asked her if she liked candy, handing her a large jar of it. Groups from each division gathered at Tuoma Palace for the foundation celebration evening. Cardinal Clavis asks if all the preparations have been completed. He emphasizes that 100 years ago, Tuoma Palace was the heart of the Kingdom of Gracia, so today, the last celebration for the founding of the empire will be held here. He unfolds a wide sheet of paper and continues to read. Rift. People call the world inside the rift a tomb. The creatures inside the tomb are called the dead. 100 years ago, a huge rift appeared in the Kingdom of Grace, and it accelerated the meeting of people with the dead. With the help of the rift, the dead fell from the tomb into the world of people and attacked them. Her Majesty closed the fissure, the passage to the tomb, and protected the people from the dead who attacked the common people. Clavis emphasizes that today they will personally open the rift with their own hands in the place where the dead first appeared. He thanked everyone who collected the altars that can open the rift. The cardinal declares that, by order of the empress, it is time to conquer the tomb. Clavis plunged his dagger into the altars, which reacted by lighting up. At the same time, a rift opened, leading to the world of the dead. Rina, like everyone else, stood in a fighting stance, waiting for an attack from the dead. The dead instantly came into view and crawled out of the rift in large numbers. Clavis shouted to all the soldiers that they had to kill the dead immediately. Rina chopped the dead mercilessly while they attacked her in piles, proving her strength. Rignan loudly ordered all his subordinate soldiers to hold the line. Each of the dukes and Prince Reuben fought the creatures. Rina mentally believes that there shouldn't be any problems. When she sees a soldier from the southern squad screaming because he is being attacked by a dead man, she runs to him to save him and does so quickly. Rina decided that the southern unit was pulling everyone down. A huge dragon-like creature flew out of the rift. The dragon flew right at Southern Duke Alice Beale. Rina was afraid for the Duke's life, but Rignan reacted quickly and overthrew the creature. The Duke was very surprised by the action of the hated Rignan. He asked why he had saved him. Rignan said that it would have been better to start with gratitude, calling the man grandfather. Rignan and Rina looked at each other, smiled, and went their separate ways. Clavis approached the rift and asked if this was the last dead man. The northern squad said that there should be no more dead men. Clavis said that everyone had worked hard, and the way was finally open. The cardinal explained that the fissure would be guarded until the conquest of the tomb was complete. He continued that this is just in case, because anything can happen. He said that it would be quite difficult if the king of the dead came out. Everyone listened to him carefully. Clavis emphasized to everyone that the first campaign would take place in 10 days. He orders them to take the crown from the king of the dead and prove their loyalty to Her Majesty the Empress. A little later, when everyone was finished and gradually leaving, Rignan told Deka that he hadn't fought for quite some time and asked him if any soldiers of the Eastern Army were wounded. Deka replied that fortunately they were all unharmed. Rignan orders them to return to the Palal. Deka repeats to the squad that it is time to return. Rignan was called out by Ruvid, calling the Eastern Duke a brute. Ruvid boldly asked if Rignan would not bow down before him, a member of the imperial family. Rignan looked at him, turned around, and replied that he did not talk to fools. Reuben called Rignan a miserable slave. Prince Ruvid began to call the Duke various names, calling him a miserable slave with dirty blood. Rinyan told him that he should be more careful with his words. Rina approached them, formally addressing Rinyan by his full name. She said that this was their first meeting. She then introduced herself by her first name. Ruvid was angry that Rina had interrupted their quarrel without paying attention to him. Rinyan looked at her strangely. She said that the Duke of the Eastern Lands saved the Duke of the Southern Lands, and his help was invaluable. The Duke of the Eastern Lands smiled at her and said that there was no need to thank her for this, and they would be on their way back. Ruvid is outraged at the disregard for his person. Rina turned to the prince and asked him not to lose his sense of dignity, and if not, to simply observe his manners. He activated his power in his hand and said with a scrunched-up face that he had unfinished business with her, and he was still annoyed with Rinyan. Clavis put his hand on Ruvid's head and said that it all depends on the dog's upbringing, and that if you train it, it can be useful, and that there is nothing wrong with that. Ruvid irritably asked to take his hand away. The cardinal said that they had to leave, and that Ruvid's older brother Jura was already returning with a detachment. Ruvid was puzzled that the northern squad was returning without him. Running to his men, he shouts to Rennie not to think that she got off easy. Rina's face showed that she was already tired of the arrogant prince. Clavis asked her if she didn't think Ruvid was cute because he had been raised so well that he didn't realize he was a dog. He greeted Rina and said that they hadn't seen each other for a long time. He asked her if she missed him. The cardinal took Rina's hand, and in response, she asked him to let go. The man assured her that if she didn't take care of him, she could pull his hand away. Rina said that if she did, he would be hurt. Clavis said that he really wanted to see her. Rina replied that it was very tiring and asked him not to pretend that they were close after a couple of meetings. The cardinal laughed and assured her that when she spoke like that, he wanted to get to know her better. The girl replied that she did not know what to do because she was not interested in the cardinal at all. She pulled his hand away and walked away from him. Already in Rina's room, Uni asks her why she is leaving when she has just arrived. She asks her to pretend she didn't see her, and then she'll forgive her for eating candy at such a time. Junie asked if the butler had given her the candy. Rina replied that he had. Uni happily said that she had done exactly as Rina had said. The girl asked if Rina thought she was doing a good job. Rina replied that she had done everything right. Uni noted that she might be crossing paths with the butler, so what else could she do? Rina opened the door to the balcony and told Yuna to talk to him about everything but Rina's walks at night. As always at night, Rina and Rinyan take a walk in the lighted and beautiful garden. The man noticed that it was the Rina he knew who had returned. He said that when he saw her in her uniform, he really realized that she was a representative of the southern lands. The girl replied that she was also very surprised when she saw Rinyan. She said that he behaved just like a dog's son. Rina joked that he was more like a puppy than a son of a dog. The man, very embarrassed, said that in any other case, these things are no different. She noted that a puppy sounds much cuter. The girl changed the subject and asked Rinyan if he would personally go to conquer the tomb. He replied that he would have to go anyway. He asked her if she would go as a representative of the Duke of the South. She replied that from the very beginning she had been invited on this condition. The man, in order to assure himself of Rina's safety, asked if she could handle it. She asks if he is worried about her. The man replies that he does not doubt her abilities. He continues that, in fact, many knights do not look reliable, but he has heard that southern knights have a lot of experience. The girl confirmed his words. Rinyan said that he was actually just worried about her, because this was not like a normal earthly battle. The girl assured him that everything was actually fine, and there was no need to worry about anything. The girl was actually happy because the tomb she was sent to as a child was like her own home. 6 years ago, in the northern lands, Clavis is on the edge of a cliff with Rina, asking her if she has ever seen dead people. The 12-year-old girl was frantically frightened by the picture she saw. He tells her to look down. Dozens of dead people were huddled together in a pile that was not just creepy, but panic-inducing. He told her that this was the land of the dead. Only Empress Nihil Grace managed to return from this place alive. In fact, a large number of people were sent there, hoping to find out what kind of place this tomb was, but no one returned. He told Rennie that he had set a condition. The girl who had been raised in care like an empress would be thrown into a tomb. He picked up the crying girl and carried her to the very edge of the cliff. He said that if she came back safe and sound, she would be as powerful as an empress. Clavis told the frightened girl that he would be waiting here and would pray for her to come back. He threw her to the dead. Clavis allows her to take revenge on him for his inhuman act. In the Tuoma Palace, there was a huge fault. Looking at it, Prince Ruvid said that it was a very devilish thing to do, because in spite of everything, they opened the fault. Clavis came up to him and said that there was an interesting fact. In the tomb, time does not go forward. Inside, time freezes, or rather, it lags far behind. Therefore, the time spent there is not even equal to human time. Ruvid asked the cardinal how he knew about it. Rignan interjected and said that this information would be passed on to the eastern representatives. The prince of the northern lands was furious and said that they had better stop because it was the north's turn to keep watch. He tells them to get lost, calling them bastards from the east. Clavis interjects, warning the prince that this is not the way to speak to a duke. Since the duke wanted to be the first to go into the rift, he came to do just that. Ruvid did not like this at all. The Duke of the Eastern Lands said that no one else needed to come in, because he would leave alone. The soldiers of the Eastern Lands wished their duke good luck. Reuben was outraged. When Rignan entered the realm of the dead, he noticed that the further he looked into the rift, the more what he saw distorted his consciousness. While riding his horse through the tomb, he feels his skin burning. He assumes it could be poison, although his silver ring does not react. He instantly noticed that magic, similar to a force called law, was flying at him from behind. The earth was pierced by the force, and Rignan barely managed to dodge it. The man saw that the prince of the northern lands, Ruvid, had ridden after him, and he was very confident and proud of his action. Meanwhile, at the palace of the southern branch, Rina and Uni came to the duke to ask what had happened to the southern knightly order. The man was a little puzzled and sad. She asked where all the knights who had participated in the silent war had gone. He replied that the consequences of the war were as ruthless as the war itself, so all the soldiers were regulating the situation in the south. The girl realized why only newcomers were left in the unit. He said that the whole state was full of heirs of noble families. He gave her a list of names of knights. She started reading and noticed that indeed they were all very famous, but all these people were a bunch of abandoned birds. Rina expressed her opinion that there was no hope of returning alive, so all the parents sent their children who they did not need. And if there are no such children, they take foster children. They cut off a finger that would hurt less. She recognized herself in this situation. The man told her that she had the right to do whatever she wanted, but he asked her not to treat them as if they were abandoned. He assured her that he did not put Ren in charge of the southern unit to abandon them. Duke Alice said she was the only one he could trust. He asked her to take care of these children. The girl replied that if His Majesty wanted it so, she would carry out the order and restore a good name for the Southern Army. In the training hall of the Southern Army, Rina went out to the soldiers. One of them spoke on behalf of the army, saying that they would not accept her as commander-in-chief. Rina confidently announced that the Duke of the South himself had appointed her commander-in-chief. She asks them if they will go against the will of His Majesty himself. She asks them why they cannot recognize her as commander-in-chief of the army. A man says for all of them that they cannot trust her because she is too young and because she is a woman. The girl was a little shocked, but reality is always present. She said with a motorized look on her face that she did not know how to live with this information. One of the soldiers said that this was a complete insolence. He aggressively attacked the girl, shouting that she could personally complain to the Duke for this. The girl replied that she did not need to do this because she had arms and legs. Meanwhile, in the rift, there is a conflict between Rignan and Ruvid, which Ruvid provoked. Ruvid tells Rignan not to appear before him until he eats him alive. Rignan, in a fit of growing aggression, says that if he is so impatient, Ruvid can bite him. Prince Ruvid smiled defiantly, but then the ground shook and the rocks and stones began to move, frightening both of them. Rignan decided to run away from the scene of their conflict. Ruvid rode after him to the end of the cliff and noticed that he could see the castle of the dead. The Duke of the Eastern Lands analyzed the castle. The castle has a strange shape, no gates or canals, and it is in a place where only the dead pass. There is no doubt that this is the castle where the king of the dead lives. The earthquake started again, which Prince Ruid noticed out loud. A large and ugly creature instantly appeared, and the dead began to come running. The men were bewildered by the action and very frightened. Returning to the office of the Duke of the Eastern Lands, the Duke himself was thinking about everything that had happened in the tomb. It all seemed very strange to him. It looked as if all the dead were made in the castle. And because of the rather large-scale landscape, they had to wander for a long time before they got back. He told his half-brother Dika that the landscape was very different from the surface of the earth. Dek noted that there was some strangeness from the moment the Duke entered the rift. In fact, only 15 minutes had passed. Rinyo was very puzzled because he felt as if at least 3 hours had passed. He remembered Clavis's words that time stops flowing in the tomb. He was finally convinced that the words about the second course of time were true. Both the place and the enemy are unknown. Deka noted that there was more news. A knight of the Southern Army attacked Rina with a sword, and they said the wound was very serious. Rinyan was very scared for the girl. The man abruptly stood up and asked if Rina's wound was serious. Deka said that the wound was not Rina's, but that of a soldier. It turned out that the attacking knight had been assaulted by Rina and was in serious condition. Rinyan did not expect this turn of events. Meanwhile, in Rina's room, Yuni was proud of her mistress for so skillfully teaching the soldier a lesson for his ill-mannered and aggressive behavior. While Yuni was improvising the events, Rina was sitting on the couch, looking a little tired. Rina pointed out that these rumors were actually false, because the knight had fallen himself. Juni was a little disappointed. Rina said that the rumors were actually much more frightening than the reality. Yuni sat down on the couch next to her and asked if this could be someone's plan. Renu is a little concerned that all the knights of the south are a bunch of young and not very educated. Yuni brought Ren back from her thoughts by pointing out that Cardinal Clavis had invited Ren to a formal dinner. She held out the invitation to Reno. It was said that the cardinal was inviting Rena Rubel, Ringyan Eiderner, and Ruvid Flens, and he hoped they would come and enjoy the official dinner. Rena arrived at the official dinner and walked into the hall where the invited Ringyan and Ruvid were sitting, and of course Clavis himself, who greeted her and asked her to sit down. Rena sat down at the table, looking at Ringyan. In response, he looked at her too. Clavis said that he had heard rumors that she was very friendly with the knightly order. Rena asked the cardinal why he had called her. The cardinal noted that the girl was quite prickly. He said that a full-fledged campaign to the tomb would soon begin. Therefore, everyone knows how important the advance party of the first campaign is. He thought, why not let the South lead this squad? Rinyan and Rena were shocked while Ruvid was furious at this. Clavis tells Rena to lead this group and lead the South and East. Rena asks if this is an order. The cardinal says that he does not act without her consent. Earlier, Cardinal Clavis had asked Marcus Rubel if he had started the rumor that Miss Rena had brought the knights to a serious condition. The Marquis replied that it was inevitable. Clavis asks if he wants to kill his daughter again. He asks if it is possible to help him and organize a trap. During dinner, the cardinal notes that today Prince Ruvid and Rignan were the first to visit the tomb, and they said that the landscape there is very strange. He goes on to say that he thought it would be better to attack familiar enemies, or rather, newborn ones. In the past, in the Silent War, the South fought to the last against the Mervis and suffered huge losses. That's where Rena was, and she was one of the best warriors, but no one knew it. Clavis noted that the South had fought a long battle with the newborns, and during this time, they should have learned them well, so the cardinal gives the South a chance to wash away its shame. Rena was a little puzzled by the choice the cardinal himself gave her. Clavis is very interested in the girl's decision. She replies that it would be a great honor for the South to go to the front lines in the first military campaign, but that she would have a request in return. The cardinal is ready to hear this request. She said that they needed to change the date of the hike so that they would go in 2 days instead of 10. Clavis was very shocked at what she was asking. That same night, Rinyan and Rena met up in the garden at night, as usual. Rinyan asked her why she had decided to go hiking in 2 days. She replied that if there was enough time, her father would prepare another trap for her. Rinyan said she already knew it would be a trap. Rena asked if her action hadn't put Rinyan in an awkward position, since the East was preparing for a military campaign. He replied that it was indeed a difficulty. The girl said she felt guilty about it. The man said that this was not necessary. Rinyan said that the harder it was, the more interesting it would be for him to watch her. The girl asked what kind of person he thought she was. Rinyan thought for a moment and replied that he thought she was strange. The girl wondered if he was thinking before he answered. Rena laughed at the situation. The man told Rennie that he believed in her and hoped she would not get hurt. She replied that she also hoped he would not be injured. She asks him to listen carefully to what she is about to say. This is because of the combined hike that will take place in 2 days. In Rena's room, the girl was getting ready. The Southern Duke burst into her room, asking if it was true that she was going on a solo campaign. Junie said it was true. She would not take any knights with her and would hold the vanguard alone. The man said that this had never happened before. The girl replied that everything has a beginning. He says that she will be the first and the last, and he is sure that no one else will dare accept her. She replies that being the only one in history is an even greater honor. The man was unhappy that she had chosen such a time to make jokes and said that she should have brought at least a couple of people from the south. Uni asked him if he was worried about her. He replied that that was the point. Rina approached him and asked him to believe in her. The man agreed and said he would try to understand her. The girl repeated her words, saying that her victory would be his victory. At Tuoma's palace, Rina was ready to enter the rift. Clavis was waiting for her, and he said that he was hoping for her. Behind her, the units from the north and east gathered. Clavis says it's time to move on to new horizons. Rina enters the rift. She effectively rips off her cloak, which is part of the uniform, and prepares for the attack of the dead. They come at her in large piles. She pulls out her sword and stands in a ready position. In Grazia, there is a book about what is beyond the rift. It is a story about a trip to the tomb of Empress Nihil Grazia, a biography of Nihil. Creatures that were unknown to the Empress fell through the gap, as if by lightning. She is the last of the Grace family, Nihil Grace. She took her sword and went into the rift. On the edge of the rift were 5 kings, long dead and buried. When Nihil was surrounded by kings, she asked who they were. They replied that they were their ancestors. Nihil asked what kind of place this was. The king replied that it was a tomb, and they run it here. Nihil asked why kings would run a place full of dead people. He replied that kings who rule an era continue to hold power even after death because their passion cannot be consumed even by death. One way or another, they want to take possession of the surface of the earth again. Nihil replied that the surface of the earth belonged to living people. The king said that in fact it was all theirs, as time had only expelled her. They did not pass anything on to them. He said that he would return again, revive his former glory, and conquer them. His face lit up with fire. After absorbing the first scream, the dead had no eyes or nose, but their ears were terribly sensitive. They had to hear the slightest sound before they would rush like arrows and tear the creature apart. The one who commanded them was one of the 5 kings who had swallowed the first cry. When Nihil saw him, she asked him why their people could not see. The king replied that they were a people filled with pity and could not look at the world straight. Nihil asked again why they would attack at the slightest sound. He told Nihil that this was their punishment, and they had to live over and over again what they regretted most. Nihil asked him again if he regretted swallowing his first scream. The king said that she should have understood everything by now. She defeated him, and as soon as she cut the king open, a shining heart fell out. She was going to touch him at least with her sword, but the king, who had turned into a black shadow, snatched his heart and disappeared. The king, who had absorbed the first cry, clutched his heart in his hands and hid in the castle. As Rina was killing the dead one by one, she noticed that the closer she got to the castle, the denser the rows of dead people became. She wanted to run quietly, but the road was too narrow. Instantly, an arrow with a bell on it crashed into the rock. This arrow made a sound that drew the dead to her side, and they attacked her. Rina was able to run away successfully. With the help of an arrow, she was able to avoid unnecessary fighting. Duke Rignan could be seen from the mountain, and he shot the arrows to help the girl a little. Rina saw that he helped her and thought he was very kind. The girl continued to move on. Deka noticed that Rignan had helped her and said that at this rate, the south would take all the credit. Rignan said that they would not go to the castle. Accordingly, Deka asked where they would go. He replied that they would go after the trophy. With their ward, they set off in search. As Rina walked toward the castle, she noticed that Mr. Rignan listened to her and did not follow her into the castle. He is not only kind, but obedient. Perhaps he just has good intuition. The girl saw that another arrow flew into the rock near her, but this one had the seal of the north. From above, Marquis Rubel released it, and behind him was a large detachment of soldiers. Rubel ordered them to shoot at her. They instantly comply with the order, firing dozens of arrows at her. She protected herself from the arrows with the body of one of the dead, so she thought they were definitely aimed at her. Her father was waiting on top of the cliff, waiting for her to die. Rina realized that he had come here only to kill her. She immediately ran a little further and called the dead to her. They, accordingly, ran toward the loud sound. Thus, she protected herself from the arrows with the bodies of the creatures. Marquis Rubel lost sight of the girl because the area where she was moving was filled with the dead. One of the soldiers remarks to the man that more dead are approaching. Suddenly, Mr. Rubel smiled. The girl hid behind rocks that made her silhouette impossible to see. The dead also covered her. Rena was badly wounded by the number of dead people who ran at her. The Marquis noticed the girl, so he asked the soldier to take command because he wanted to go somewhere.